Oh my mother, oh my mother, oh my mother, family. Bombshell after bombshell. I'll do a little summary because this is huge. We reach a day where Franco Colapinto is in the news, where the news is that he's not going to RB. Many were asking if RB is a better option or if Alpine is a better option. At that moment, Sport Maniaticos gave you the answer. Check out this video on the official Sport Maniaticos channel. This one is from Alberto of Sport Maniaticos. A lot of people also asked, Alberto, what's going on with this? That he's not going to RB. They were saying that he was. That too is answered on the official Sport Maniaticos channel. Also to respond to that, there's another bombshell that's breaking now. Family, Max Verstappen will travel to the Red Bull factory to try to solve the problems of a car that's difficult to drive. Does this ring a bell? Something that Sport Maniaticos also explained by doing a lot of investigation. A displeased Verstappen is the Racing Bulls faster than the Red Bull family. And Horner says he doesn't think Red Bull is fourth, as Verstappen asserted. And why fourth, you might ask? Besides checking Lawson's radio and having a laugh for a moment, I'll tell you why fourth. We've already explained it on Sport Maniaticos. You'll see it in the telemetry. Verstappen is practically out of Red Bull. And my question for all those who, with the Muku, say that Franco Colapinto isn't going to Racing Bulls is, and who's going to be the driver at Red Bull and Racing Bulls this season and next season when my dog leaves? Welcome, Sport Maniaticos, to the Formula 1 section of YouTube. Stay, enjoy, and smash a mega like as big as you can for the good investigation, for the good information, for all of us Sport Maniaticos who stay up nights with no sleep, so that you're well informed. No worries if we're passionate about Formula 1. We love it. Family, the latest news brings Franco Colapinto much closer to Red Bull. Not to Racing Bulls, but to Red Bull. Not in the short term, because everything we've investigated points to Racing Bulls, but in the medium term, he could be Verstappen's replacement at Red Bull. I wonder why. Because what is happening inside Red Bull? Pay attention, Sport Maniaticos investigation. Why are they thinking now about Colapinto? What's the difference compared to previous months? Did Colapinto crash and that's why they didn't rate him before, but now they do? Have those crashes stopped? Or have they seen that Lawson is worse? They have Tsunoda. No. Has something changed? Because as the Godflores Verstappen was saying, there's a supposed clause that if, after the first 3 or 5 races of the championship, he's not among the top 3 in the standings, he could leave Red Bull. See what good investigation does, family. See what it does to know why Horner doesn't think Red Bull will be 4th. Why 4th? Specifically. Why does Verstappen say that? Because Verstappen is now going to the simulator, as we're going to analyze, because there are problems. Verstappen has always made his staying on the Red Bull team dependent on his performance, family. Red Bull's performance is bad and getting worse. We know this. This has been brewing for a while. We think he might go to Aston Martin or perhaps Mercedes. We'll see. That's another Netflix series we'll watch at the right time. What's clear is that they've just put up the premiere poster for this series, and that series directly affects Links or Linkes, call it what you will, the Franco Colapinto series, family. That's Netflix. You see how the logic lines up? What does this mean? Joking aside, family. Listen, Red Bull, what drivers do they have? Verstappen, Lawson, Tsunoda, and Hadjar. Well, they're relying on Lawson. We'll see what happens. Tsunoda is a Honda driver. Honda disappears in 2026. That's the first unknown. Verstappen is out. Now I'm going to show you more. Another driver is leaving. Who's coming behind them? Pepe Marti. Lumber, I think he's called. Are these drivers on par with Colapinto, with Colapinto's experience, or do they need miles in the TPC? Lumber doesn't even have a super license. So what is shaping up? Do you see it clearly? What might happen? Because beyond what's taken shape in the short term, I think we're starting to glimpse the medium and long term. It could be that Colapinto becomes very important for Red Bull, or that's what they want at Red Bull. Why do they want him at Red Bull? There's the question, isn't it? In that sense, it was expected that today things could go south, and they did, and the plan is simply being fulfilled. You have this analyzed in that video. In this video from Sport Maniaticos, after many hours of investigation, without just blurting out the first thing someone tells us, it seems everything is lining up. I can't confirm anything, and I must, just like last time, I don't have direct sources. I won't get tired of saying it, but the investigation we're doing is much deeper than the previous one, precisely because we don't have direct sources. I can tell you that Verstappen is in a tough spot, and you don't have to be an engineer to understand that a car lapping in 1 minute 38.5 seconds, while Norris is at 1 minute 39.2 seconds, or vice versa, is 7/10 of a difference. That's how the Red Bull was born family. 7/10 of a difference, eh? Then when Norris eases off, the gap isn't as noticeable. But have you noticed that this is absolutely crazy? And that this completely distances Verstappen from the top 3 positions in the championship over the first 5 or 6 races. 5 or 6 races into it, Verstappen could announce he's leaving Red Bull. There's a supposed clause. If this were true, if he's gone by race 6, what better than already having Colapinto in Japan, right? Another last-minute piece of news that directly brings Colapinto closer to the Racing Bull's orbit for now. But what is Red Bull planning? What do they want? And obviously, is Briatore going to allow that? Because we thought this was only for this year. Could there be something more? Will they let Colapinto go this year? And then, if Verstappen leaves next year, as could happen, they remove Verstappen, remove Colapinto, Lawson, and then my dog can't drive 2 cars. Family. My dog can only drive 1, not 2. You understand? And we'd have to prepare him with some TPC mileage. Poor dog. Horner doesn't think Red Bull is 4th, as Verstappen claimed. We're gonna get into the details so you know what's cooking at the last minute with Verstappen, which directly affects Colapinto's future. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner doesn't believe Verstappen's words claiming they are the 4th team on the grid. Think about how everyone else reads that information and how a Sport Maniatico reads it knowing about the possible clause. It's very different, right? That's why I say you've got to be well informed. He says, I think it's all subjective depending on the day you're on. Today, McLaren are the benchmark. They've won the first 2 races. That's what we have to achieve. We're working very hard collectively as a team, and Max Verstappen is working harder than I've ever seen in terms of effort, giving real direction on what the car needs to find that pace. Have you seen what Horner is saying? He's stretching all this out. These statements to the press feel more like statements to a judge when Verstappen files a claim to leave Red Bull using the clause in his contract. You get me? I think it's pretty obvious. He said, it depends on what everyone else is doing. To get back in the fight, we know the areas we're working on, and we're gonna keep looking to improve the car. We'll see in 2 weeks in Japan. You see how they're trying by every means to get performance out of a car that doesn't have any? Horner, that's an orange all squeezed out. Don't squeeze it more or you break the juicer, man. He says, never say never. I think the thing McLaren showed everyone last year is that you can have a problem at the start of the season but still be very competitive. Again, talking to the judge. Your Honor, he can't leave on these grounds because the performance can come if we pull it off at the end of the season, like the McLaren precedent last year. Believe me, there's somebody in a robe here. We're 8 points behind in the Constructors' Championship. It's a very tough task, and we need to make huge progress with the car if we want to fight it out. And you need 2 cars to win, he said. Last year, that cost us a lot. So we need to have 2 single-seaters, and even to compete with the other cars, you've got to have another one in the mix. So it's very important for the team to make sure we have both close to the front. But in McLaren's situation, they already have half a car for 2026. We're talking about how they don't stop making excuses. And now, they're blaming Lawson when we know the car is practically undrivable for anyone who doesn't like oversteer. Verstappen is unique. He's like a lefty. There are very few in the world, but they tend to stand out, right? Verstappen is the same. He likes oversteer. Most drivers prefer understeer. They tend to think it's faster, but it's proven it's not. Still, they give you a car like that if you've spent your whole life driving a different way, like Checo has. Look at Checo at Racing Bulls and Force India and that Red Bull. What a difference, right? Well, if you still have any doubts, notice a displeased Verstappen. Is the Racing Bull faster than the Red Bull family? The answer seems to be yes in qualifying, though, not in the race. This is crazy. The car where Colapinto might go, according to everything that's happening. Verstappen already thinks the other is faster, right? But look at the technical analysis this website, El Gold Digital, gives us. It tells us, technical logic backs this troubling possibility. Tsunoda, pay close attention, has on average been 0.24 seconds faster than Lawson in qualifying, 2/10, and approximately 0.11, a tenth, faster per lap in race pace, okay? More in qualifying than in the race, all right. Based on these values, and given that Verstappen is about 0.9 seconds per lap faster than Lawson, the conclusion is clear. Verstappen would be 0.65 faster than Tsunoda if he were driving a Racing Bull. Listen to this. In qualifying, doing a pure simulation with this data, it would put Verstappen on pole position in Australia and China with a Racing Bull. You understand the difference, right? It's simple to compare. And it says, the Red Bull chassis seems more stable and more manageable than the RB21. We've seen it since testing. How it moved around. How it spun. Verstappen says, however, race performance is something else. The satellite team loses more than 1.7 seconds per lap compared to the front, compared to the 0.48 on average for Red Bull against McLaren. There's a big difference in race pace. And you should know that Checo Perez had an average of about 0.56 according to this. Though I'd say it depends on the race. And look, Lawson, for example, is 0.9 slower. Tsunoda, clearly about 0.5 or 0.6 behind. He'll improve a bit, but he'll still be behind. And what are they going to do? They're not going to improve this. They don't have Adrian Newey. And Verstappen, notice that, so the judge sees Verstappen in a good light. He's even going to the factory. Verstappen will travel to the Red Bull factory to try to solve the problems of a car that's difficult to drive. That's something, huh? How many times did he go in 2023? He says. To be honest, in the first lap, it went well for me. Because anyway, my position wasn't up to theirs. So actually, being right behind them was better because I was simply running my own race pace. In Australia, I tried to fight, but then the tires degraded really aggressively, he says. Have you seen how the message is also directed to the judge? It's the car, Your Honor. I can't do anything. Look at the 2023 telemetry and see this. In my clause, I wanted 2023. Look at what they gave me. All right. Look how spectacular it is that Verstappen is continuously lapping slower than Norris by about half a second or more. But if you think about it and you put Russell in there, Russell is also, check here, 6/10 at the start of races. At the start of the race, he's even slower. If you put Leclerc as well, 6 or 7/10 also at the start of the race. You see how crazy this is? If I put Antonelli, Verstappen is a tenth faster than Antonelli. Do you understand what's happening? Do you understand to what extent Verstappen is overdriving the car a ton? And that, well, I tell you, it's really fun seeing him like that, huh? I want to see the next races. Too bad he's lost so much of that aggression he used to have. He's become almost a perfect driver, you could say, in the sense that that degree of aggression, which was so spectacular and we loved, we don't see that anymore. He's controlling himself, presumably for the judge too. That's my question, right? I think it's pretty obvious what's happening. I can't show more proof. I think everything leads down the same path. What's more, the site Motorsport revealed that Verstappen will be at the Red Bull factory on Wednesday in Milton Keynes to analyze the team's situation thoroughly. Marco said, Max will be at the factory next week and will talk with the engineers about the weak points. Then, will try to fix them or improve the car as soon as possible. Why as soon as possible? Again, you want me to show you the clause. In 6 races among the top 3, the situation changes with the different circuits and tire compounds, but McLaren is good at every circuit with every compound. We're worried, but it's not like we're throwing in the towel. Verstappen's position is less optimistic. He says that achieving it in the short term is impossible to say. Maybe yes, maybe no. We just keep working. We have to stay united and give our all. That's what we all do. I know the team is working flat out. I was quite positively surprised by the second stint. It gives us a bit more hope and probably also a direction to follow. But of course, it's still not where we want to be, especially if we compare ourselves to McLaren. That second stint, I'll show it to you right now compared with Piastri. He's talking about this part of the race, this part. The orange line is always below the blue one, always, except in these 4 or 5 laps where you can see Piastri's data spike for whatever reason, an error or lapping traffic or something. But if you have to take an average, what would it be? Maybe around 137.0 for Verstappen, 136.6 for Piastri, 4 tenths. 4 tenths in Formula 1 is a long time. A lot of time, family. And don't even get me started on the beginning of the race, where the difference is much bigger. Here we can see with Piastri, 9 tenths, 1.1 seconds. This is shameful. What's happening now to Red Bull, right? So Horner was saying, we can't be that defeatist. We're 8 points out of the championship, the thing I showed you, right? They're basically giving statements to the judge. I have no doubt that Verstappen does not have a guaranteed future in 2026 at Red Bull, huh? And they don't have drivers. This is breaking news that, as I showed you, obviously brings Franco Colapinto a lot closer to Red Bull. Or what do you think is going to happen? I'm interested in your opinion. Do you think Verstappen is happy? Which drivers are going to join Red Bull next year if this happens? Because I don't know if they'll have to call Checo, as I said in a video, because there aren't any solutions, and Checo remains a Red Bull driver. Many people say, no way, man, they paid him, I don't know how many millions, etc. Have you seen Horner's latest statements talking about Checo's contract? He's still tied in, having to do demos, or who knows what. That who knows what could perfectly well be getting in the car. Because if not, my dog's going to have to drive. It's clear what's going on. Meanwhile, the meetings continue. And it's more than something Alpine wants. It's something Red Bull wants, based on what I've explained. The same thing is happening here with Alpine. I'll give you another key as to why Alpine has said that's not going to happen. They're negotiating money. The same kind of hit they tried to pull on Briatore, James Vowles, pushing the negotiations forward. Postponing negotiations for so long, generating anxiety among Franco Colapinto's fans, which ended up raising the price. What's happening now, gentlemen who claim to be journalists? Can we do our job well and investigate that the same thing is happening? They asked Alpine, and Alpine said no, that they don't want to give up Colapinto. Sound familiar? Why are they dragging out the whole process? And why will it drag out a bit more? Because there are millions at stake. And I'll repeat what I said in previous videos. Watch them, because there's information I haven't shared here. If they're directly making this move so that Franco Colapinto goes to the Racing Bulls team, it's not something they're going to shout from the rooftops. They're negotiations, I insist. And besides, the fact that Alpine has said they won't release him, beyond being a negotiating maneuver, is the same thing we saw when Sport Maniaticos broke the exclusive that Colapinto was joining Alpine. Just as we reported, they came out with the Kiwi Moto thing to try to make it look like it was that instead of the other. A lot of people came to my video and a lot of people believed that and said, oh, it's a lie, etc. Fine, calm down. And there I was dancing with my dog on TN. And then Colapinto himself came out 2 hours before saying, no, there's nothing signed. And I was back out dancing on TN with my dog. 2 hours later, attention bombshell. Colapinto signs with Alpine, and nobody was surprised or anything. The only thing that happened is the boat got full. We had direct sources then. Now it's costing me more, with fewer hours of sleep, investigating a lot, seeing many things from people I consider reliable sources. But I think it's worth it, right, Spotmaniaticos, to understand what's happening here? Do you think Alpine, when Ole.com asked, are you going to give up Colapinto, is going to answer yes? They just hit you with a huge price hike to get Colapinto by dragging it out the way James Vowles and Williams did. And now you're going to say, yes, of course, sure. Since we're going to Japan, let's put our backside out there like Japan's flag too, right? Family, investigation equals conclusions, and conclusions equal getting closer to the truth. When there are no direct sources, you have to investigate. Investigate means seeing everything that's moving, in what direction it's heading, and the only direction it's heading, with the Verstappen situation added in, is that Colapinto is very likely, whether in Japan or later, to end up at Racing Bull. I can't guarantee anything, but obviously I have fewer and fewer doubts each day. Family. I was also surprised by all this, and I started investigating, and these are the conclusions. Thanks to all the Sportmaniaticos who send me information, I'm overwhelmed by how many people are writing to me. All the Sportmaniaticos at the corner bar will get to the truth and to the conclusions we need to reach. As I told you yesterday, before all these came out, there will be moments when everyone thinks no. And some will assert one thing, others will report something else, and other moments will come. Let's hope for the good moments.